This is another Tybootha presentation. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take interesting sources, pull out the key knowledge, and make it quick and easy for you to grasp. Today we're getting into Christmas Humphreys' book, simply titled Zen Buddhism.
Yeah, and for you, the listener, this book is actually a surprisingly clear entry point into Zen. It can often seem, really complex or out there.
Right, esoteric.
Exactly. But Humphreys, he's writing as a Westerner, but one with real experience in Japan after the war. He sort of distills the main ideas without burying you in jargon.
Efficient, like you said,
Right.
getting to the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Christmas Humphreys himself, he was in quite a unique spot, wasn't he?
He really was a Westerner, but deeply involved in Eastern thought. He was a big name in the British Buddhist scene.
So his take on Zen, it's shaped by that background. It's like a bridge for Westerners trying to understand it.
Precisely. He's translating these complex spiritual ideas into language that might resonate more over here.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the core concepts of Zen as Humphreys lays them out. What did he think was most important for us to understand?
Okay, so before we jump into the chapters and the actual Zen concepts, maybe we should talk a bit about the book itself as an object.
Good idea. What's it like?
Well, it's got the usual stuff, a bibliography, an index, handy if you want to dig deeper on something specific.
Standard book stuff.
Right. But what's really interesting is the illustrations he includes.
Ah, yeah. Tell us about those. Are they just decoration?
Not really, no. They add a lot of context. There's this really striking image of Bodhidharma meditating, Zazen posture.
The founder, basically.
Well, the one credited with bringing Zen to China, and then photos of real people, Professor D.T. Suzuki.
The guy who brought Zen to the West, really.
Absolutely pivotal. And also a photo of an unnamed Zen master. It sort of grounds the whole thing, makes it feel less abstract.
And there's more than just people, right?
Yeah, it's quite broad. You get a sense of the whole world of Zen. Pictures of a Buddhist bonze, the Golden Pavilion Kankakuji, that famous temple.
Beautiful place.
Stunning. And the Daikokuji Garden. So you get the philosophy, the people, and the places.
He even includes koans drawn by his wife.
Yeah, and a print of the tea ceremony. It shows how Zen weaves into art and daily life.
Right, it's not just sitting and thinking, it's lived.
Exactly. Even judo. There's a picture of judo practice in London. It shows how these principles can even show up physically in the West.
Okay, so visuals give context. What about the preface? You said that sets the stage.
It really does. Humphreys is very upfront about his writing style. He basically warns you it's going to be a mix.
A mix how?
Like serious, but also lighthearted, rational, but then sometimes intentionally irrational or paradoxical.
Oh, reflecting Zen itself.
That seems to be the idea. He's trying to use the writing style to nudge you past just purely logical thinking. He says it up front.
Okay, so expect the unexpected.
Pretty much. And he also mentions he uses personal stories and quotes others a lot. So it feels less like a dry textbook, more like he's guiding you through his own exploration.
And the quotes are important.
Very. He leans heavily on others, especially Professor D.T. Suzuki. He flat out says Suzuki was basically the source for Western understanding of Zen at that time.
Didn't he say something like 3/4 of all the English material on Zen came from Suzuki?
He did. Yeah, it really shows Suzuki's massive impact.
And Humphreys also mentions Professor Pratt calling Zen unspeakably queer.
Right. And instead of dismissing that, Humphreys kind of leans into it. He suggests Zen operates beyond just sense or nonsense.
Into nonsense.
Yeah, that's his term for the direct experience Zen points to. So the preface is basically saying, keep an open mind, don't expect purely linear logic, because we're aiming for something beyond that.
Okay, makes sense. So structure covered, preface covered. Let's dive into chapter 1. Beyond the intellect. That title says a lot.
It really does. It's central. Humphreys starts right off questioning how much our intellect alone can really grasp the fullness of life.
You mean thinking has limits?
Essentially, yes. He quotes Maeterlinck saying, intellect leads us to see that everything is, deep down, incomprehensible. And R.H. Blythe adds that relying only on intellect can actually squash, imagination, compassion, other vital stuff.
And Blythe also warned about intellect creating rigid dogmas, right? Boxing us in.
Exactly. Fixed ideas, philosophies. And then Humphreys brings in Aldous Huxley's idea.
Which was?
That maybe the ultimate point of reason is to kind of prepare the way for something beyond reason, like intuition or a more spiritual way of knowing.
So intellect is a tool, but not the only tool, maybe not even the final one.
That's a good way to put it. Humphreys then talks about how intellect loves opposites. Right, wrong, good, bad, pleasure pain.
Our default way of thinking.
Right. But he uses Blythe's examples like, whether you're on a throne or a toilet, you're still a person, to show that these absolute divisions might not be so absolute after all. They're constructs.
So these opposites are ultimately untrue. Or maybe just not the whole picture.
Not the whole picture, yeah. Which leads him to intuition.
Okay. How does he define that?
As something beyond those opposites.
Yeah.
A kind of direct knowing. Not through the senses, which just see the physical stuff. He quotes Plotinus.
Who said?
Intuition is absolute knowledge founded on the identity of the mind knowing with the object known. It's a direct inner knowing, a certainty that can feel weird if you only trust logic.
And it's not something you can just turn on.
No. He says these insights often just pop up, but you can cultivate it, pay attention, practice, and always test it against reason and experience, of course.
He also mentions Huxley's hierarchy of the real.
The idea that our everyday reality is real, sure, but it exists within a bigger, more fundamental reality that we can only really sense intuitively. We can't fully pin it down with words.
And this is where Zen comes in, as a direct path.
According to Humphreys, yes. It bypasses the purely intellectual route. He looks at ways people try to reconcile opposites intellectually and finds them lacking. That's why, he says, Zen sometimes uses nonsense.
Paradoxical statements.
Yeah, to deliberately mess with our usual thought patterns. Break the conceptual habits.
Like that story about the monks and the girl at the river.
Oh yeah, perfect example. One monk helps her, forgets it. The other obsesses over the broken rule for hours.
Stuck in his head.
Exactly. Stuck in judgment, missing the present. But Humphreys is careful. He's not saying ditch the intellect entirely. No, it needs to be fully developed first. You sharpen the tool before you can see its limits. He quotes Suzuki saying it's disastrous when intellect thinks it's the only reality.
So how do you know if this intuition thing is starting to wake up?
Humphreys suggests it's gradual, a feeling of more holistic understanding. Rigid rules start to feel, well, tedious, limited.
Like the painter who painted bamboo red.
Yes, challenging the should. Intuition sees beyond those fixed boxes.
Okay, and this awakening, he says, unlocks poetry, helps us see the unity in things.
Right, moving beyond just measuring and categorizing, recognizing that deep down, all life has equal value. It's all connected.
Got it. So moving to chapter 2, the background of Zen Buddhism. This gives us the context, right? Where Zen came from.
Exactly. He quickly covers the basics of Buddhism's origins in India. 4 Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, Karma, Reincarnation, Nirvana, the fundamentals.
And then Mahayana Buddhism comes into the picture.
Yes. He positions Mahayana as the sort of philosophical ground Zen grew out of. Mahayana shifts the focus.
How so?
Big emphasis on compassion, the bodhisattva ideal, aiming for enlightenment, not just for yourself, but to help everyone.
So less individualistic.
In a way, and seeing the Buddha not just as one historical guy, but as the principle of enlightenment that's within all of us. This led to more, rituals and imagery developing too.
He compares the older Arhat ideal focusing on your own liberation with this bodhisattva ideal.
And he mentions Suzuki's view that they aren't totally opposed, maybe just different facets of the same goal.
And the 2 pillars of Mahayana.
Mahaprajna and Mahakaruna. Supreme wisdom and supreme compassion.
Prajna is seeing the unity. Karuna is the compassion that comes from that.
You got it. Seeing everything's connected, prajna, and because of that, feeling compassion for the suffering within that inner connectedness, karuna. He even links these ideas to Western thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and John Donne, showing these are universal concepts.
And the bodhisattva's dedication really comes through. That quote about wiping away tears.
Yeah, very powerful. It shows it's not passive, it's active compassion. But he also stresses you need to work on yourself first.
Self-purification before teaching.
Right. You can't really guide others if your own mind is messy with ego and dualistic thinking. He tells that story about the monk who couldn't see it because he was stuck in his own ideas. Mental barriers block the view.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Chapter 3, the birth of Zen Buddhism. Now we get to Zen specifically.
Right. Enter Bodhidharma, the figure credited with bringing this particular stream from India to China. Humphrey stresses Zen was different from the start.
How so?
Direct experience, not just studying texts or doing rituals. The core became seeing into one's own nature, directly, beyond words.
And then it splits into schools.
Yeah, the 2 main ones. Rinzai, which uses those cons, the paradoxical riddles, quite heavily, and Soto, which focuses more on Zazen, the seated meditation practice.
Then he talks about Japan, and the samurai connection, that seems really significant.
Hugely significant. Zen really clicked with the warrior class. Its emphasis on action, self-discipline, self-reliance, even facing death calmly. It lined up perfectly with Bushido, their code.
So Zen became almost a philosophy for warriors.
In many ways, yes. Humphreys describes Zen as poor, meaning needing an empty mind, adaptable, radically empirical, focused on direct experience. That immediate action needed in combat mirrored the Zen ideal of immediate, unthinking experience.
And it wasn't just warriors.
No, he makes it clear it seeped into Japanese art and culture deeply, shaped their whole aesthetic. Then he briefly mentions how Zen started arriving in the West, early 20th century.
Through people like Soyen Shoku and Suzuki again.
Suzuki especially, and later writers like Blythe and others. But he always circles back. Reading is fine, but real understanding, that needs practice, direct experience.
Which brings us neatly to Chapter 4, In Search of Zen. Sounds like trying to catch smoke.
Yeah, pretty much. Humphrey starts by saying the best answer to what is Zen is just that's it, because you can't really describe the essence, only the forms it takes.
It resists definition.
Completely. It's the life within the form. It won't fit neatly into our mental boxes, but, and this is key, it's not vague either, it's the active principle of life itself.
He uses that coal example.
Yeah.
Black and not black.
Right. To show it operates beyond simple yes-no logic, he talks about levels, below sense, nonsense before concepts, and beyond sense, nonsense.
And that nonsense is where Zen points. Beyond concepts.
Exactly. Hinted at by a smile, a flower, not explainable. Yeah. He can't possess Zen or just talk about it. He tells that story of the master telling off the student who talked too much about Zen.
Okay. Then he mentions key sutra scriptures linked to Zen.
Yeah, Diamond Sutra, Sutra of Huineng. Important texts available in English. He calls them religious currency, valuable pointers, but not the treasure itself.
The finger pointing to the moon analogy.
Classic one. The text helps you look, but it's not the thing you're looking at. The whole universe is the real scripture, but books are, a handy starting point. He quotes Huineng again. Practice matters more than just reciting.
And the core idea keeps coming back. Seeing into one's own nature.
Hess.
Yeah.
That's the essence. Hessen is like our personal filter over the universal mind. Seeing directly is Zen. He uses Toshi's saying about Buddhas being in a stone.
But you'd still use the stone as a hammer. Practicality.
Right. And contrasts Tennyson wanting to understand the flower with a Zen master just crushing it to show its raw essence, no sentimentality.
Things are what they are, not just symbols.
Exactly. Samsara, the world we see, is mind working in a conditioned way. See it rightly without the conditions, and you see oneness. Then he gives that definition. Nature is mind is Buddha, Buddha is way, way is Zen. Seeing your original nature is Zen.
What are the signs this is happening, the symptoms?
He lists a few. Growing simplicity, feeling less caught up in petty stuff, but more aware of the moment's significance. A sense of balance, not getting stuck in opposites.
And a feeling of rightness.
Yeah, like things are unfolding as they should. He quotes Marcus Aurelius, thorough acceptance, trust. Action becomes right action, done for its own sake, not for gain.
The paradox of self. Ego shrinks, true self grows.
Like the Taoist idea of doing good without claiming credit. Action and inaction, just doing what's needed. This habit of right action can build up like good taste in that poem he quotes. It comes from aligning with the natural bias of things.
The flow of the universe.
The Tao.
Right. Watts' idea about the significance of the moment, living in harmony. The right life is the natural life. Just aligning, letting go of self-will. And this affects aesthetics, Japanese art.
Profoundly. Simplicity, purity. Think of the Tokonoma alcove, the Ryowanji garden. Binyan said Zen art suggests it doesn't spell things out.
You see it in flower arranging, clothing, poetry, painting.
Even the tea ceremony. Okakura called it adoring the beautiful in everyday facts. The Zen mind state is key to the ritual. It's a vibrant influence across the board.
Okay, next chapter asks bluntly, but what is Zen? Back to the indefinable.
Pretty much reinforcing that intellectual answers fall short. He uses the Alice in Wonderland analogy. Again, the path isn't straight logic.
And he revisits the opposites, the dualities.
Right. Saying compromise on that level is weak, you need something higher, but even that Olympian calm can still be intellectual.
Then he introduces Jijibuchi. Sounds complicated.
It is abstract. From the Kigon school, Jido is like individual things, events. Ri is the underlying principle, the void, totality. Jijimuj is their perfect, mutual, unimpeded solution. Basically that each individual thing, Ji, is totally dissolved in the principle and totally dissolved in every other individual thing,
Right.
all interconnected yet distinct.
The doorknob is the cat.
Exactly. His absurd example to show how logic breaks down, it points to a reality where our perceived boundaries aren't fixed.
So if logic can't grasp it, how does Zen help us understand?
That's the core technique, to help you leap from just thinking about it to actually knowing it. First-hand experience, building that rickety bridge of nonsense.
Baffling the intellect.
Yeah, exhausting the intellect and emotions to create space for that direct knowing to break through.
Which leads perfectly into the next chapter, Zen technique.
Right. Zen is that leap from thinking to knowing. The techniques are for those who can't just leap spontaneously, they build the bridge.
And it's not passive, not just zoning out.
Definitely not. He calls it a strenuous middle way. It takes real effort, clear intention, especially at the start. He quotes Master Umen, "If you walk, just walk. If you sit, just sit, but don't wobble. Focus."
Can you get glimpses early on?
Sometimes, yeah. A foretaste of that peace of God. He mentions Bodhidharma's wall-gazing, not passive staring, but intense self-concentration.
Then koans and mondos. These are key tools.
Crucial, but again, not intellectual puzzles. They're meant to disrupt thought like mental catalysts. Suzuki called them deadly poisons that can cure.
Need preparation first. A real desire for liberation.
And Humphreys adds his view. Zen vision isn't seeing new things, it's seeing the same things differently.
And then doesn't start with assumptions. No God, no fixed soul.
Right. The koan's job is to empty the mind of all that baggage, all the thought deposits, foster fluidity. Nothing should remain when Zen arises, not even fancy ideas. The koan reorders the mind's chaos.
He talks about unconscious assumptions, sankharas.
Yeah, the tension between the koan and those deep habits leads to Satori, seeing into one's own nature. The unconscious is the source of our core beliefs.
So the koan breaks down the false self, lets the universe in.
That's the idea. The true self emerges where conscious and unconscious meet. But he warns this can be risky without a teacher. You need guidance.
Okay. Suzuki classified techniques: verbal, mondo, and direct.
Yep. Mondo is the back and forth. Paradox, contradiction, affirmation, repetition, even shouts. The master tailors the response. Huang Po said there's no single right answer.
And direct methods?
Aim straight for Satori without analysis. Silence, blows, shouts. Things that bypass the intellect entirely.
He connects this mind emptying to other traditions. Mysticism, Taoism.
Yeah, like Chuangzu's mind as a mirror idea. But Zen avoids pure passivity. It's the middle way. Focused and receptive. Ready for Satori.
Koan and mondo are the main tools then.
Principal devices, yeah. Mondo is part of the face-to-face teaching. Pupil focuses, asks, waits for the master's reply word, action, silence, always specific to the student's state.
He gives examples.
Lots of vivid ones. Master holding up a staff, demanding speech beyond yes, no. Rinzai's famous quats shout, telling the student with no ideas to throw that idea away. Hakujo in the geese basso tweaking his nose, concrete, direct.
Always concrete. Like the question about escaping summer and winter.
Right. Or teaching compassion through a polo match anecdote, grounded. And silence itself is powerful.
The Tao that can be spoken.
Is not the eternal Tao. Exactly. A master silence can be dynamic, healing. He quotes Emerson, Holmes on expression being vital to realize meaning the birth of art.
What about daily life for a monk?
Constant self-enlightenment, no sharp work-play divide. He describes the meditation hall, zendo, the intense Sanzen interviews with the master, lay retreats, session, but reminds us Zen experience can happen anywhere.
Okay, chapter 7. The big one, Satori.
This is it. Humphreys is clear. No Satori, no Zen. Satori is Zen. It's the measure, going back to the Buddha's own enlightenment. Koans, mondos, they're tools. Satori's the goal, the meaning, the essence.
A shift from seeing division to seeing non-division.
Yeah, seeing the unity beneath the differences, while still seeing the differences, living in the now, total flow.
But it takes huge effort.
Immense, like knocking until your whole being is thrown down. Preparation is long, personal, shaped by karma.
And the paradox.
Yeah.
You have to stop trying to get it.
Right. Watts's point. Satori often happens when you've exhausted all effort and finally let go. As you get closer, the mind expands to the whole and focuses intensely on the immediate. Not self shrinks, true self grows. Laughter helps ease the tension.
Seeing birds before thinking space and time.
That primal awareness, Satori is like the skin fallen off, revealing the one substance underneath, a moment of immense power.
And he finds parallels in the West. James, Buck, Tennyson.
Yeah, experiences of unity, illumination, ego transcendence. He shares his own Kyoto experience too. It's not exclusively Eastern.
What about sudden versus gradual levels of enlightenment?
He presents different views. Watts emphasizes suddenness, like a scale tipping. Suzuki and others suggest stages, degrees. Solving your first koan is the end. Pratt noted Satori can be temporary, maybe rarer now.
And the Japanese humility don't claim Satori.
Right. Deep Satori is rare. Obstacles include a hyperactive intellect, too much attachment to senses. He likens it to the Sermon on the Mount, a high ideal, compares it to religious conversion. Degrees lead towards merging with universal mind.
But a Zen master would just say, go clean your boots.
Haha, probably. Keep it practical. Minor Satori can inspire haiku, Tanka finding depth in the simple, Noguchi's high atmosphere, wabi, yujin. Basha's famous pond poem is a prime example. Arguing about your Satori is pointless.
The first result of Satori is more Satori.
Often, yeah. Psychologically, it's a second birth. Death wound to the ego, anatta, birth of the true self. It remakes your life. The test is the effect. And crucially, total destruction of the idea that you attain Satori.
Like the master's question, who put you under restraint?
Perfect. Freedom was always there.
Okay, next, the results of Satori. What happens after?
He uses Dante's Paradiso as an analogy for that higher consciousness. Focus on the absolute moment, the sacredness of the now. Intellect gets pulled back to center. Truth is experienced directly, without mental constructs.
No self-congratulation, no focus on merit or happiness.
None. Morality becomes natural when you're aligned with life. Rules, Vinaya, can help, but can also hinder if you cling to them. Satori reveals life's own rhythm, its own laws, like Coleridge's idea of genius creating its own rules.
Outer life aligns with inner change, guided by the voice of the silence.
Gradually, yes, but controlling it might not be immediate. He shares that story, great insight in a Turkish bath, but flat mind later when he tried.
But for a master, it's a tool, consciousness raised at will.
Exactly. Though even a master isn't in Satori 247, adeptness shows in the application.
Then Zen, in English literature, finding Western echoes.
Right. Wordsworth's inner fused feeling, Vaughan seeing eternity, but still as an observer, Whitman's certainty. He even suggests Nelson at Trafalgar had a kind of Satori calm, intuitive action, acting as an instrument.
He notes the suddenness in poetry, sudden gait.
And the Zen love for concrete things, the unity of infinite and ordinary, contrasts it with abstract Victorian virtues or graceless modern poetry. Quotes, Flecker, England dies without poetry.
Whom is Zen? Tennyson.
Yeah, Tennyson's still trying to understand the flower intellectually. Done seeing God in things, not the unity itself. Humphreys links Zen to deep humor, beyond just funny serious. Wit from a higher mind. Even Lear's nonsense verges on it.
Alice in Wonderland again.
Full of Zen potential, he thinks. Falling down the hill, crossing the stream, letting go. Maybe aiming for that golden crown of Satori.
And haiku.
A glimpse of the unspeakable. Direct sensation. Western attempts often add rhyme, focus on poetry itself, miss the Zen core. He shares his own attempts.
Okay, nearly there. Penultimate chapter. Zen for the West.
Here he argues the West needs a new kind of enlightenment, a new expression of the one light.
Because science and religion failed in the world wars.
That's his view. Zen, being formless, might be more resilient. He critiques swapping religion for science, psychoanalysis, or especially nationalism, powerful but dangerous.
Zen isn't for mass religion.
No, knowledge is sacred, for the trusted. Social service comes from understanding, not as the path to it. West needs something practical for daily life. Zen offers divination of the daily round.
A man's religion. Goddard's description.
Yeah, individual thought, self-reliance, adventure, authenticity, simple life. Zen offers that, he says. Rejects begging God for salvation, find it yourself, like the core of the apple.
Zen helps spiritual neurotics.
Yeah.
Overthinking, underdeveloped intuition.
A disease of civilization, he calls it. Eastern ways are psychological techniques for enlightenment, not theology. He knows the objections Watts, Jung warning against blind copying.
West needs its own way.
Exactly. Apply universal principles authentically. Avoid extremes hating the outer world or the inner world. Zen is to be used, lived, not just talked about.
Like learning to swim or play piano. Direct action.
Jiu-jitsu. Judo embodies it physically. Learn by doing. Raise the mind to the all-mind to solve problems. Stop thinking them into existence. A single thought separates you. Can't use mind to seek from mind. It's a vast task. Self-realization. Finally, instead of conclusion, a wrap-up.
Life is flow. Zen is the flow, not an ism. Eternal. He uses Indian ideas. Kamas, inertia. Rajas, activity. Sattva, harmony.
Raja's energy can be selfish. Self expands from I to all. False self fades, true self grows. Intellect is limited, can't grasp Djimaj, that ultimate unity.
But struggling with intellect develops it, creates tension.
Right. Tension pushes the will, driven by desire for truth, to break limits. Intuition, the new way, is always there.
Different techniques lead to the same end, Satori.
Prayer, meditation, koan all point to that joy, certainty. Satori comes differently for everyone, slowly, based on karma, makeup, illumination, flashes, longer awareness, maybe attainable states, jhanas with practice, goal. Access it at will.
He contrasts his thousands of words with one line of poetry, careless trust.
Yeah, Satori is in that careless, selfless trust. Not priggishness, but realizing we stand in our own light, like the samurai's immovable mind, mind asleep for defense.
And ends with exercises.
Preliminary ones for intuition. Laugh, be serious, be quiet, watchful, energetic, stop rushing, be still, feel the divine occasion, relax. Drop worries, laugh more.
So, wrapping up our dive into Humphreys' Zen Buddhism, the big takeaway seems to be, Zen isn't just ideas, it's direct experience, beyond the thinking mind.
Absolutely. It's about seeing into one's own nature, letting go, embracing the flow. Intellect helps you start, but the real deal is that direct knowing.
Cultivating intuition, mindful awareness in the moment.
It's not just understanding Zen, it's thinking about how you might live it.
Which really leaves a question for you, the listener. After exploring these ideas through Humphreys' eyes, is there any part of your own life, your own experience, that you might look at now through a different lens, maybe a bit more of a Zen lens?
And thinking about the limits of the intellect we discussed, where might your own true deep dive into understanding really begin?